Jigyansa, having inquired of Atma Yatharthya, right knowledge of one's own self. Mune, from the learned philosopher. Vyasa Sutat, the son of Vyasa. Aso, he, Hitva, quitting. Idam, this material attachment. Nipa, okay. Gangayam, on the bank of Ganges. Yasyati, will go. Atha, directly. Akutavayam, the life of fearlessness. Translation. After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the son of Vyasadeva, who will be a great philosopher, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. Please repeat. After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the son of Vyasadeva, who will be a great philosopher, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. Purport by His Divine Grace, P.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Material knowledge means ignorance of the knowledge of one's own self. Philosophy means to seek after the right knowledge of one's own self, or the knowledge of self-realization. Without self-realization, philosophy is dry speculation or a waste of time and energy. Srimad Bhagwatam gives the right knowledge of one's own self, and by hearing Srimad Bhagwatam, one can get free from material attachment and enter into the kingdom of fearlessness. This material world is fearfulness. Its prisoners are always fearful as within a prison house. In the prison house, no one can violate the jail rules and regulations. And violating the rules means another term of extension of prison life. Similarly, we in this material existence are always fearful. This fearfulness is called anxiety. Everyone in the material life, in all species and varieties of life, is full of anxieties, either by breaking or without breaking the laws of nature. Liberation or mukti means getting relief from these constant anxieties. This is possible only when the anxiety is changed to devotional service of the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam gives us the chance to change the quality of anxiety from matter to spirit. This is done in the association of a learned philosopher like the self-realized Shukadeva Goswami, the great son of Sri Vyasadeva. Maharaj Parikshit, after receiving warning of his death, took advantage of this opportunity by association with Shukadeva Goswami and achieved the desired result. There is a sort of imitation of this reciting and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam by professional men, and their foolish audience thinks that they will get free from the clutches of material attachment and attain the life of fearlessness. Thus, imitative hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is a caricature only, and one should not be misled by such performance of Bhagavatam Saptaha undertaken by ridiculous, greedy fellows to maintain an establishment of material enjoyment. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajata Sagana Raguna Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijanasahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhamritamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Manchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vacharam Anhum Langayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Devataya Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Paramanandam Hare Krishna. So welcome to this Srimad Bhagwatam class. Today we are continuing our series of reciting Srimad Bhagwatam like we do every day in the morning. About the pastime, the birth of Emperor Parikshit. And here the Brahmanas are actually predicting various qualities of Parikshit Maharaj, Emperor Parikshit, and what will be his activities in future. We see this similar case, like it was customary at that point of time, like whenever there's a birth of a child, especially somebody who is in the great family, it's a customary that like they would invite these astrologers and brahmanas to chant, to invoke auspiciousness, to yajna, and also the astrologers would make the birth chart and they would predict. So that has happened, like if you observe in the case of Krishna Balaram as well, that Gargamuni comes and he also predicts like what would be the activities of Krishna and Balaram. He also gives them the name Krishna and Balaram as well. Similarly, in case of Lord Chaitanya, we see Lord Chaitanya's own maternal grandfather, Nilambar Chakravarti. He was also a very expert astrologer himself, and he also predicted what would be the activities and like this, how this child is very special. And he has appeared before, sometimes he appeared in different colors, like black, red, and white, in different yugas. And in this age, he has appeared in the golden form. And then he also predicts about the wonderful qualities of Lord Chaitanya. And that's how we named him Vishwambar. Like he'll be very famous throughout the world. And of course, their parents, with love, they would call him Nimai, because he was born under the neem tree. But there was also a formal name, and the meaning, and also the predictions, or like checking of astrology and everything. Similarly, in this case, we also find Parikshit Maharaj, he was born, and his qualities are described, and there are predictions made about him. And you see, he's just born here. I mean, he has just taken birth, and they are also predicting about like how he's going to leave this world. So if you see, this is something they are narrating to Yudhishthir Maharaj, and in a way that he's just born, the child is just born, and they are also telling about like how he's going to leave this body, like, and when he inquired from these brahmanas, they give this explanation, and that made Yudhishthir Maharaj also very happy, or like all the Pandavas who were present, because they heard that after inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the son of Vyasadeva himself, who will be a great philosopher, like here, I think even Vashudeva Goswami is not yet born, so it is given in the future tense, like who will be a great philosopher, the son of Vyasadeva will be a great philosopher, and he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. So this Prabhupada translates this Akutaha Bhayam, the life of fearlessness. Another thing about Akutaha, like what we Akuto Bhayam, it's the place where there is no fear, and that place is called Vaikuntha. There are no anxieties or there are no fears. So it also means that like he will go back to Godhead and he will live in the planet with the Lord himself where there is no fear. So that made Pandavas and Yudhishthira Maharaj also very happy in terms of, because they already know that this person has very great qualities which are mentioned in the previous verses. But at the same time, the most important thing for them was like to be the devotee of the Lord, and he will perfect his life. Even though they didn't give so much attention, or like they were not so much worried like what curse he will get and everything, because they were certainly sure that anybody who has taken birth is sure to going to die. Is going to die. How is going to die? These are like just the details for them. But what destination this child will achieve, that made them very happy, because he will achieve the life of fearlessness. That is, ultimately it's an indirect way of saying that he will go back home, back to Godhead, to Vaikuntha. So here, the Prabhupada, of course, he divides purport in two major paragraphs. In one paragraph, Srila Prabhupada talks about like how he will inquire about self-knowledge or like self-realization from the sages or like from the son of Vyasadeva. And then Prabhupada goes on to explain like what is ignorance and what is the knowledge of self-realization. And like Radhika Mataji always refers, and like she was mentioning earlier, it is about going from material level to the spiritual level. So here also there is a description of quality of anxiety from matter to spirit. Like Srimad Bhagwatam gives us the chance to change the quality of anxiety from matter to spirit. So in a way, Prabhupada is trying to explain that somebody who has a self-knowledge, who understands what is the original position of that of living entity, and he has transcended the material anxieties and other things. Of course, there are also anxieties in spiritual world. For Mother Yashoda, for example, like she's also very much in anxiety when she sees like Krishna is not around, or like Krishna is in trouble. So there is an anxiety in spiritual world as well, but that is born out of love. And it is for Krishna, mostly it's for Krishna. Or something directly or indirectly related to Krishna. So anxiety is there in this material world as well as in spiritual world. All the aspects of our life, our emotions, everything which is present in material world is also present in spiritual world. In fact, whatever is present in spiritual world, it's like the perverted reflection that exists in the material world. So here Prabhupada gives an understanding like what's the meaning of self-realization and how one should inquire properly about the self and understand and try to perfect its life. And then later on in the last paragraph, Prabhupada also takes a note of there is a sort of imitation of reciting and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. A lot of we see there are like professional reciters of Srimad Bhagavatam who take some feast and just they do Bhagavad Saptah just for some amount of money, and they try to explain certain very esoteric pastimes, and the audience, they think that like just because we did this Bhagavad Saptah, we are now delivered just like Parikshit Maharaj, they compared themselves. But there's a huge difference between hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam by Parikshit Maharaj and the devotees in general, and the devotee or the person who are imitating this reciting and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam. They also kind of imitate like somebody, there is also a Shrota, there is also Parikshit as a representative of all the audience, and the Bhagavatam speaker, he poses himself as like Shukadev Goswami, and they also say that like there is a Parikshit, and basically Parikshit is somebody who is hosting the Bhagavad Saptah as the person. He has to be there, and the speaker has to be there, and then they speak Bhagavatam for like 7 days. Of course, if it is done with the good intention and for spreading the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, or like exchanging or like relishing the pastimes of Srimad Bhagavatam, that is good. But just for like taking a feast and just doing it for the sake of some ritual and imitating Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadev Goswami, something which is condemned by all the acharyas. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very, very furious and very strong against this professional reciters. And he would always say that like, don't be a professional preacher, and don't be like, even for Kirtan he said like, you don't be a professional singer. So there has to be love and devotion while doing the Shravanam and Kirtanam, because this is the important activities of Bhakti. So when we are performing this Shravan and Kirtan, the important element of both Shravan and Kirtan is the love and devotion. It should invoke love and devotion amongst the audience as well as the speaker. And it should be done in the way to glorify Srimad Bhagavatam and not oneself or for some self praise or like if you are doing Kirtan or like reciting Bhagavatam. But it has to be done to glorify Krishna. That's the main point what all the acharyas emphasize on. So, and Prabhupada then he says like such imitative hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is a caricature only. Like one should not be misled by such performance of Bhagavatam Siddha undertaken by ridiculous, greedy fellow to maintain an establishment of material enjoyment. So if you see caricature like something which is we draw as a caricature, like it's an imitation of something which is already real. At the same time, if you see there is a simulation, if there are any pilots or anyone, so they first practice on a simulation. They create an environment, they see something virtual, like a real flying experience, they work on simulation, and then once they are sufficiently aware of all the systems and controls on the plane, then they go and actually go and fly the plane. So it's like a simulation. Like, of course, it gives, externally it looks like we are actually flying a plane. It gives the experience of the real situation that would occur on the plane. But it's, at the same time, it's not the same. Like it's just a simulation. But actual flying, it involves much more variables. It has various other factors like wind speeds and other different factors are there. And that has to be taken care of, and it comes with certain practice, with some certain study. Of course, they read something, they practice under the guidance of an expert, like somebody who's teaching how to fly the airplane and everything. And they also gain certain things from experience. So in Mahabharata it comes, like 1/4 of your knowledge, it comes from this spiritual master. Like spiritual master, he teaches you something and you understand it. That comes from the Guru. The other 1/4 comes from your self-study. You study, you understand what are the different scriptures, what scripture says, or like any study, like anything which you learn, the other 1/4 comes from your own self-study. The third comes from Vaishnavas, or we understand, we discuss. Like for example, we have reading groups, we discuss amongst each other, we share our realization and we understand from our peers or like other fellow Vaishnavas who have better understanding or they have a different perspective of the same knowledge, material knowledge, or even the spiritual knowledge. We understand the other one-fourth out of them. And the last one-fourth, or the last part of it, it comes from the experience. And the experience is about when you actually perform that activity or practice something which you have learned or practice spiritual life. So there is always an experience which is gained throughout the years, or which comes with the time and with the experience. So the last part comes from the experience of the time. Similarly, so that's why whenever we are approaching a senior devotee or anybody, even somebody, it's a natural culture in India, anybody who is elder, it's a tendency we go and offer respect and seek blessings from them. One of the reasons you can achieve all the three things. You might have studied better, and then you might have discussed much more deeper with other Vaishnavas. You might have gained much more knowledge from the Guru itself, but you cannot buy the time. You cannot gain the experience which they already have. So it's always considered that somebody who is better, even in the age, the life experience that they have is much more than yours. So it's a custom or it's a tradition that we offer this or we seek blessings from the seniors, even if they are just because they are elderly or they are advanced in the age. And you get something more because they have seen the world better than you and they have much more experiences about life. So similarly, our acharyas also give emphasis on these aspects. And the last word here, I'm again quoting that he will achieve a life of fearlessness. So Jiva Goswami states that in his commentary on Shat Sandarbhas in Bhagwatam Katha, he states this fearlessness comes as a byproduct of the pure surrender to the Lord. Somebody who has full faith in Krishna, or he has surrendered himself fully to Krishna, the byproduct of that is the fearlessness. He becomes abhay. So if we see this mudra, which Lord normally does, if you see any Vishnu Murtis, this mudra is called the abhay mudra. It's like Vishnu deity or any deity who is having this posture, they are actually giving the abhaydhan, or they are giving the fearlessness. So here, so this fearlessness comes from the Lord. When we are 100% totally surrendered, we have this firm faith that Krishna will protect. Avashya Rakshite Krishna. So this faith, this firm faith in Krishna gives result to fearlessness. So if you see, there is a deity of Varadraj in Kanchipura. So on one hand of this deity, it is written, Ma Shucha, Sarva Dharman Parityaje Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja, Aham Tvam Sarva Papabhyo Moksheshami Ma Shucha. Do not fear. So on this Abhay Mudra of that particular deity, actually it's written in Tamil, but it means Ma Shucha, do not fear. So when you have this darshan of this deity, Varadraj deity, he gives you the assurance, do not fear, I'm here for you, I'm here to protect you. And another quality of Varadraj, he's very much easily pleased. And that's why he's named as Varadraj, he gives boon very easily, Varat, the word, and he gives that, he's the king of giving boons, Varadraj. So he gives a lot of benedictions easily and he's very pleased. But at the same time, he's also giving an assurance that, Ma Shucha, don't fear, I'm here. I will provide everything whatever you lack, and if you don't have anything, I'll provide that. Yoga Shaiva Mahamani also. So Krishna is repeatedly assuring us, but unless and until we have 100% faith in Krishna, we will not develop that 100% fearlessness. And we have seen this, that all our acharyas, if you see, Srila Prabhupada, his name himself is Abhay Charana Ravinda, he's Abhay Charan himself. Prabhupada had like fearlessness. He has total 100% faith in Krishna that Krishna will protect. Even if you know, if you just imagine, if you have like 40 rupees right now, can you go, like even for shopping, you cannot go with like 40 rupees. If you're in like any place. Like even your like traveling fare would be around that 40 rupees if you are like in India or like for travels. But Prabhupada came with like 40 rupees to US with like 100% total surrendered faith in Krishna that like Krishna will give the right words and I will try to repeat the message of Krishna consciousness and hopefully by Krishna's mercy they will understand what message I am trying to give. Similarly, if you see in the life of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada, like Saraswati Thakur also was very fearless preacher. He's known for that. And Prabhupada used to say that like if Saraswati Thakur would have airplanes just like me, he would have like already covered the whole world and already all the countries would have been already Krishna consciousness and he would have like already started preaching on other planets. If he had like some species or anything, he would have gone to other planets also and start preaching. And it's so that like he was so powerful preacher. Sometimes like he would travel on the train and the train would stop on one station. He would stand on the gate of the train, he would give the message of Krishna Katha, and then on the platform, devotees would come and sit there, and even the station master would come, or sometimes even the engine drivers, they would come, and they would listen. There would be Katha for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, like he would preach to them, and then they would go to the next. Like he would just travel like that sometimes. And even in the life of Prabhupada and Prabhupada disciples, if you see, sometimes Prabhupada would just ask the disciple, like he was one time, like he was, like I mentioned this before as well, like he mentioned Guru Tejas Prabhu, and he was traveling with Prabhupada, and I think Gurudas Prabhu was also there with Prabhupada, and they were traveling on the train. And he would just ask one of his disciples to get down on one station and start a temple, or like start a center there. And they would do that. So they had this fearlessness, they also have this 100% faith in words of Srila Prabhupada, and that's how that fearlessness is actually developed in the devotees, or like somebody who has surrendered 100% to the words of spiritual master or the words of Krishna. And if you see, like even like Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj or Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, they would live their lives in forest, and they would be doing bhajans, like they would be residing in very secluded place. And that point of time, they would be actually living with the wild animals, and they are in complete harmony. They would be chanting their rounds, they would still live in a place. And it's not just in the days, of course, in the night, there would be like some different creatures who would be moving around in the forest. And unless until you have achieved a certain level of faith in Krishna or like fearlessness, it's not easy for anybody to actually practice those kind of bhajans. Even in the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, if you see how fearless he was, then there was some Falgu Bhagwan, or like there's a person who was claiming that I am the God, and he had actually had some yogic powers from his matted hairs. He used to generate certain kind of energies that actually made the whole family of Bhaktivinoda Thakur very sick. Like they were having very high fevers, and because of his different magical black magic and other tricks, he was actually Thakur. And then Bhagwati Devi, the wife of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, she came and said, like, should we just, can you just leave this person? I think he has some mystic powers, and because of that, we are having all this negative impact. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that he's claiming that he's God, and he's preaching false philosophy. I cannot tolerate that. Let us all die. It is much more better that we die because of this black magic and other curses, rather than to submit to this kind of person and tolerate something which he is preaching, which is not true. So he had that particular faith, and of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he survived, and he actually, in a way, like the other person, the yogi, got actually arrested, and then they cut the hair, and then he lost all his magical powers and black magic and other things. But the point is, like all the acharyas, if you see, there's a constant theme of fearlessness in all the acharyas. Unless until there is a complete surrender, that fearlessness cannot be artificially generated. It cannot be artificially imitate it, because any other things you can, maybe you can imitate other things. For example, like if somebody's, so for example, crying in front of deities, you can, maybe some people, you can fool them by artificially crying and other things. But fearlessness is something which is internal, or the faith in Krishna is something which is internal. One example of another I can think of is Rasikananda Prabhu. If you have heard Rasikananda Prabhu's name, he's a very, very, very powerful preacher. He's a disciple of Shamananda Prabhu, who was a disciple of Veda Chaitanya, and who was a disciple of Gaudidas Pandit. Basically, he comes from in that line. And Rasikananda Prabhu, he had total 100% surrendered attitude towards his Guru and his world. He was so surrendered. One time there was an instance, he was honoring Prasad, like he was honoring Prasad, and then he gets a message from his spiritual master, Shamananda Prabhu, that Shamananda Prabhu needs you for certain things, like for some certain things. Some messenger came and he told him, like, there is a message from your spiritual master, and immediately he asked that messenger to read, and he said, like your spiritual master needs you in this place. So he was about to take a morsel. He just got up and started walking. He just started, because he was not thinking any other thing, like he's eating, or like he should wash his hand or something. And it is said that like he just started walking towards that, because for him the message of his spiritual master is something has captured his mind and of like utmost urgency. And then when he reached that place, then he realized that he has not washed his hand. And then Shamananda Prabhu was like, he asked, like, were you actually eating? He said, yes, but how did you know that? And then he said, like, oh, your hand is, like, you still have morsel in your hand. And then he realized, okay, there's some food in his hand, and then he washed his hand and offered obeisances to Shamananda Prabhu, and then he fulfilled the task which Shamananda Prabhu has actually asked him to do. And he was completely in a different city. And there was some conflict related to land, and then Shamananda Prabhu wanted him to resolve that conflict, and that's how Rasikananda Prabhu reached there. So he had this faith in the word of his spiritual master, and he was very fearless. There's a famous instance which might be all of you aware of. There was a mad elephant which was sent for killing Rasikananda Prabhu. So there was a ruler, a Qazi ruler, who was there in charge of that particular province. And Rasikananda Prabhu and Shamananda Prabhu, they were like a total team. Like they would be a guru-disciple team. And their way of preaching is that like they would visit a village, they would stay there in that village for a week or something, they would conduct some festivals. And by the end of those like 1 or 2 weeks, all the residents of that particular village will become Krishna conscious. They would all become their disciples or like surrendered devotees. Those devotees would be like totally surrendered souls to this Shamananda Prabhu and Rasikananda Prabhu. Rasikananda Prabhu would organize all the programs and everything, but they have so much empowerment from Lord Chaitanya that they can transform the lives of all the people in general in the village. Just in like in one festival, they would go preach. They have so much conviction. Just by attending those kirtans, those kathas, they would become surrendered souls, and they would become the perfect Vaishnavas. And if we see, like, so that was actually happening. So they would just go from one village to another village, and they would just start preaching. So the capacity, or like the preaching at which the intensity of preaching was so much so that like the whole province of that particular Kasi actually became Krishna conscious. And those the Qazi who was actually ruling in that particular province, he got to know that this is a very, very strong personality called Shamananda Prabhu and Rasikananda Prabhu. And Shamananda Prabhu eventually he would go to some other province, but Rasikananda Prabhu would stay and would continue his activity. And Rasikananda Prabhu, because his glory was spreading across the province, and this Qazi was becoming very insecure, so he wanted to actually test this person. Some of his ministers came to him and said that he's a man of God. You cannot actually hurt him. So the Qazi said, like, if he is actually a man of God, he is actually dealing with self-realization. So let me test him. Like, I would set this mad elephant to kill him, and he is actually a person of God, or if he is an empowered person, then he will survive. And if he is not, if it's somebody who is faking, then I think, of course, he will die. So actually, at that point of time, he was traveling from one village to another village, and there was a person who actually invited Rasikananda Prabhu, and they were carrying Rasikananda Prabhu on a palanquin. So there are 4 disciples of Rasikananda Prabhu, because at that point of time, like, he was also traveling for long. He was traveling on foot, but as soon as he reached the outskirts of that particular city, some of his disciples came forward and brought a palanquin, and then he was sitting in that. And then they were bringing that palanquin. And then this particular Qazi, he sent this mad elephant. He was like raging mad elephant who they would use it for wars and other things. He was very furious. And then they charged this mad elephant towards Rasikananda Prabhu. And this elephant, he was running with great speed, with great rage, like his eyes were burning, very furious. And he saw Rasikananda Prabhu on the palanquin, and he knew what is his target. And there were other disciples who were carrying Rasikananda Prabhu. And then they saw this mad elephant rushing towards him. So they became fearful. They kept the palanquin there at that particular spot, and they started running, and they actually ran. And they expected that Rasikananda Prabhu will also run. So that's why they kept the palanquin, and they also ran. But Rasikananda Prabhu, because he was understanding the intention of Qazi, or like understanding like why it is being done. But more important to that, he has faith in Krishna and his protection as well. And when he was seeing this mad elephant running towards him, he was seeing a living entity or the soul within that particular elephant, the mad elephant. And any normal person would be fearful in that situation. But the emotion which generated in Rasikananda Prabhu was the emotion of compassion. He saw this elephant and he said that he actually saw the elephant's eyes, and elephant actually saw in the eyes of Rasikananda Prabhu. And the elephant could sense that he's not fearful. Even though he's trying his best, he's not fearful, and he is running towards Rasikananda Prabhu. And their eye contact is constant. And within that eye contact, Rasikananda Prabhu said to this elephant, "Why are you getting angry and wasting your life in troubling people? Why are you wasting your life?" This is the just one word he heard from Rasikananda Prabhu, and it comes from so much from his heart and concern and compassion that he stopped. This furious, raging elephant, he stopped and offered. He stopped and he didn't do anything, and he actually offered obeisances to Rasikananda Prabhu. And so much so that there was a connection between Rasikananda Prabhu and this elephant, and he didn't actually hurt. And then he actually initiated this particular elephant, and he gave him the name Gopaladas. He gave him the name Gopaladas. He became initiated disciple of Rasikananda Prabhu. Somebody who's going to go and kill him he was now surrendered disciple of Rasikananda Prabhu. And he also gave instruction to this particular elephant. He gave him instruction that you go and serve the Vaishnavas, and wherever there is Hari Katha, Hari Kirtan, you go and hear that. And you also go and preach to your fellow elephants if you get a chance. So he would actually do that. This Gopal, he had so much faith, like he had so much surrendered faith in his spiritual master's word. Like he would, whenever he would see anybody with tilaka, anybody who's having kantimala or like chapmala, he would go and offer obeisances to all those persons. But because he had a reputation, because he was raging like a fighting elephant, they would be fearful, they would run away if they are not aware that he is actually Gopal Das. And sometimes he would hear that his spiritual master, Rasikananda Prabhu, is doing some katha. So he would go to marketplace, he would collect some grains, and of course merchants, he would say, okay, Gopal Prabhu is here. And they would give some rice grains or like some bags of rice. But most of the merchants who were not aware, like he's actually a devotee, they would out of fear, they would run. And then they got to know that he's a disciple of Rasikananda Prabhu. So they came and complained to Rasikananda Prabhu that like he's visiting and he wanted to serve. We know his intentions are good, but because he's so big and fearful, we are all fearful out of him. So then Rasikananda Prabhu said like, okay, you can respect the Vaishnavas from distance. It's okay. Like I will understand. Like you wanted to, you try to serve the Vaishnavas, but because of you you are in a different body, it's difficult for them to accommodate you. But you can certainly chant the glories of always remember Krishna, and you can preach. And whenever, so I'm there, you can meet personally whenever you are there. So he made an exception, even for elephant. And what he would do at that point of time, he would go and collect some bananas, he would collect some foods from the forest, and then he would go and offer it to his spiritual master, so even the elephant who came to actually kill Rasikananda Prabhu, he transformed that particular person in a surrendered soul, or like surrendered devotees. And even the glories of Gopal Das was spreading. And there was another, of course, another ruler in the nearby kingdom was hearing about this very great warrior elephant, and now he's transformed into a Vaishnava. He's offering obeisances to any devotees, like anybody who is coming in front of them, and he's chanting Hare Krishna in his own way, and dancing when there is kirtan. So this person also got very envious. They tried to capture him one time, two times, but they failed. So the third time, what they did, because this elephant has faith in the Vaishnavas, so what they did, they dressed all this like warriors or like somebody who's going to capture this elephant. They put a Vaishnava tilak. They all put a Vaishnava tilak, and they are going to actually kill this elephant or Gopal Das. They all approached this Gopal Das with the tilak on, and he could understand that all these persons are going to kill me. He could understand like they are coming to kill me. But at the same time, because he saw like they are wearing tilak, he could understand like even though they are like externally they are posing themselves as Vaishnavas, but they are not. But even like he could understand like, but still they had Vaishnava attire. He actually surrendered. He didn't like attacked on them, but he offered obeisances to those persons, and then those people came and actually captured and killed him. So even though he was aware like they are going to come and kill, but his respect for Vaishnava etiquette, or like somebody who's wearing Vaishnava tilak, was so much so, like so great high, that he was fearless and he surrendered to his instruction, because his spiritual master said to him like, offer respect to all the Vaishnavas, aman. We hear this so many times, but in practice when it comes, like even a small agitation can, like you can say something very negative about the person, can hurt. So here, like this constant theme of fearlessness which I was talking about, or the various acharyas, if you see in our time and all the great acharyas in the past, they have always executed this principle of fearlessness, and this is all born out of because they were 10%, 100% surrendered to Krishna, and they have 100% faith in Krishna's mercy and Krishna's grace. So I think it's time. If you have any questions and comments here in temple.
I have a very small comment.
Yes, Mataji.
So many beautiful points you make as usual. What I wanted to make is that you transform this idea of matter into spirit. So many times we don't see that others are doing it, but it's just like the deity. The deity looks like it's made of matter, but it's spirit. But we need to become spiritual to see that. When we identify with ourselves as matter, we cannot understand the deity. So it's on both parts, the object and the observer. We have to become spiritual to understand all this beautiful katha.
Thank you so much.